Good afternoon, everyone. It's Louise here from Eleanor Grace. I'm going to do our next lot of couching stitches. We're going to do two varieties of a type of couching called pendant couching. And you can see my examples here on this piece here. Let me bring that in a little bit to show you. So first of all, we've got something called open loop pendant couching, which is this purple one here. And then we've got one called closed loop, as you can see, basically, because this is closed like a full circle. So these are two different types of pendant couching that we're going to try. And what I would say is for these ones, and I do excuse me if you can hear any kids shouting in the background. It's a nice bright day here, and there's some kids out the front playing around, so I do apologise if you can hear any of that. But these are stitches a little bit more complex, but we will give them a go. What I would say is, having tried these, I would really advise against using stranded embroidery floss for the pendant parts of the stitch. You can use it for the couching stitches that are keeping it in place, but I would not use stranded cotton for the pendant parts, because you need something that has a bit of strength to it and that doesn't split. I've used cotton perle here, which, as you know, is always my favourite. What I have got as well as the cotton perle, is some linen thread, which is really nice. It holds its shape. Trying it with stranded embroidery floss, it just doesn't look so good. It doesn't hold itself together in the same way. As an alternative, as I say, the cotton perle 8 would be perfect. This holds its shape a little bit better. It's a little bit it just hangs a little bit better, so that's what I've used here, as you can see. I'm going to try with some of this linen thread though, and just see how I get on with that. But I'm going to start on a new piece of I've made myself a new little mini pad, as you can see here. I'm just going to bring this out a little bit so I've got space to see what I'm doing. And what we're going to do is start off with the first stitches with the thread that we're going to use for the pendant part. So I'm using that lovely linen thread here in sort of peachy sort of colour. And as you probably remember from some of the earlier work that we did with couching, some pieces you don't have to pull the couching thread through to the back. Some of them you do. In this one you do, and that's what we're going to do for these pendant couching. The original stitch of the looped part needs to come from the back, so I've put in quite a big knot here into this bit of linen. So I've done a couple of knots there, and I'm going to start on my new fresh piece of practice pad here. So I'm just bringing that through, and then, because I haven't got two needles on me, I'm going to take the needle out of that one and get my colour that I'm going to secure it with. So I'm going to secure it with this blue cotton perle. As I say, you can use any thread really to secure with. You could secure with, just normal machine embroidery thread, anything. But for making these specific turns, you need something with a bit of weight, as I say. So a cotton perle or a linen, or a thread that it doesn't split and that has got a bit of body to it, so you can have a rummage around and see what you can find. So first of all, in order to start off the stitch, we need to put an initial stitch in to hold this before we start doing the pendants. So what I will do is put in a stitch around here, and when you're doing this, you should do the stitches in the same direction every time. And with this particular stitch, it is recommended that you start at the top and that you secure underneath the thread. So that we've done with lots of different types of couching already. So you've put in the first stitch. Hopefully you can see the contrast of colours there. So this is my piece to be couched, and this is the piece that's the thread that's going to keep it in place. So what I will do first is we will do the open loop pendant couching, which is this one here. Again, it looks a bit like a snake, like that one does. I don't know why they've come out like that, but this is one where you don't close off the loops. What I found easiest, and this differs from some of the things that I've read about couching, is that rather than manipulating it, the piece here, whilst it is threaded, I found it much easier to manipulate it just on my own without having this piece threaded into a needle. I found that a lot easier. So what you will need to do before you start is think about how many loops you're going to do and how long a piece of thread you're going to need, because this takes up a lot more thread, this type of couching, than some of the others we've done. It's not just going in a straight line, it's going loop, loop, loop. So you don't want to start off and then realise you've not got enough to cover. I'm only going to do a trial of about sort of 4 or 5 of them. So I've got a piece here which is just under 30 centimetres or 12 inches. And that is more than I need, but you're better to have more than to have not enough and then suddenly realise you can't finish your piece. So what I have been doing is actually just manipulating it into shape. It seems very strange. Now, even with the thicker and the more firm yarns, you can see it naturally wants to start kinking itself. So I'm not going to make these too big. I'm going to keep these to a fairly small size, and I've literally just manipulated that into shape, and then I'm going to go over the thread to keep it in place. And there's my first little loop. And then you want to aim, obviously, if you're planning to do it all the same size. Again, you might want to draw a couple of lines, or you might just want to look at it visually. That's what I did last time, although, it's not 100%. As with anything in slow stitching, perfection is not a requirement here. And you can also, if you have made a little boo-boo and you've got one bit that's really long and one bit that's shorter, you can still pull these through a little bit once they're secured, but you don't want to try messing around too much. And as with our slow stitching ethos, perfection is not a requirement here. So I'm going to make another couple of loops there. So as you can see, with this sort of sturdier thread, it's much easier to manipulate. If you can imagine trying to manipulate 3 strands of embroidery floss or something like that, I think you would really struggle with it. So I really recommend something firmer, and just manipulating that into place. And again, we're going the same direction every time with the stitch, and it's in these pendant ones, it's always up and over from the top. And there we have our second. So it's a very, very simple one, this, really, but I say simple, it has its issues, and the type of thread really does make a difference. So if you can get in linen thread, some lovely ones I've got from car boot sales and vintage markets. So if you have any of those, or otherwise the cotton perle 8 would do perfectly well. That did a really good job here. So that's a little bit easier to find. So that one is the open loop pendant couching. What I'm going to do is just finish this one off so you can see I'm making this a bit shorter than I was planning to, because I have waffled on a little bit. So when you finish, again, you want to look at how much space you gave here, and you want to finish off with the same sort of distance, so you're not so it's not looking odd when you finish off. So I'm going in there, and I'm just going to, got Ella's fur on here. That girl gets everywhere. So let's just knot that off, and I'm going to do the same with the cotton perle here. Just knotting that off. Okay, so that is our open loop. We're going to do the closed loop, and I think what I will do is get some of this vibrant acid yellow thread here. Let's just pull a bit out. Bear with me 1 second. I'm just going to cut a bit. I know that's a bit naughty, but here we are. Okay, so we're going to do the same again. I'm going to put a double knot in this one, and we're going to do the closed loop now. So the closed loop is this one here, and it reminds me very much of sort of old fringing techniques we used to have on a lot of soft furnishings, particularly in the 1970s. Well, that ages me a bit, doesn't it, really? It's quite a pretty quite a pretty stitch, actually. I really quite like this one, so might be something I put into some of my work. Okay, let's put knots in both of those. So again, with this one, it's the same as the other, that you start off with coming through from the back. So you are actually starting off initially with your thread that is to be couched. So let's go along here, shall we? So I'm going to start there, and then you could have both of them threaded with into needles. I'm making do with one needle here, and of course making sure that the eyelet is big enough to take through both types of thread. This linen yarn is not that thick, but I couldn't have a really small eye to this needle. So we're doing the same again. We're starting off with an initial stitch coming up and over, and what I like to do, and I do this in several stitches, including bullion and all sorts of things, is that actually also herringbone, is that I move the thread with my thumb, as you can see, to get it to lie straight. You know, sometimes if you're coming to put a stitch in up and over like I've done there, the thread can sort of move down or up a bit, so I like to move it around and get it working. So I'm going to take the thread that I'm working on, and what we're doing is manipulating it into a circle in this case, which we're then going to close off. So when you've made the first stitch, you don't want to make the circle as I did here. I made it a little bit too close to the first stitch. I should have given myself a bit more space and come over here somewhere. So what I'm going to do is literally manipulate this. I'm doing it in a slightly more exaggerated way just to show you, but I'm literally, you could make really big loops of this. It doesn't have to be teeny tiny, but those of you who've known me for a while do know I tend to work on a smallish scale, so I feel that's a nice size. I think I'm going to go for that. And again, what you want to do is slightly manipulate it with your fingers until it's in a line. You want, unless you were looking purposely to do a sort of meandering thread, which would look very nice, what you want to do is get it in a line. So what I tend to do is put the top stitch here through while I'm holding it, again sort of slightly wiggling it, and practice does make perfect on this, it really does. And there you go, you have your little pendant loop. So this one is a closed loop, and so what we do then is leave ourselves a little line along here. Now I have seen people do them very close together. That's the usual, is to do it quite close together, but I think it would also look quite interesting, wouldn't it, to put another stitch in here and then give yourself a bit more space and do it over there. However, I'm going to do it close because that is, the way that this is often done. So with a slightly firmer thread like this, I need to give both hands over to it. So you can start manipulating it into space. Now, it looks very fiddly. I'm sure once you get used to this, you get a bit quicker and a bit more used to working with it. So you're wanting to get a similar size if possible. But again, perfection is not a requirement here. So I'm going to put in my little stitch, which is going to hold this all together. So what I do is put my thumb over the different pieces just so they don't move around too much. Put my initial stitch through and then put it through and trap those. And again, you can start to gently pull it to make it slightly smaller, or you can sort of fiddle around with it while you're there. But I think these are really lovely stitches. I'm going to do one more for you. And I think once you do it, I know I got a little bit quicker. I actually did those examples a little while ago, but I didn't have the time to record the video. So I know when I do this, I get a little bit quicker as I go along. And since you don't have to worry about perfection, says me, trying to be a little bit too perfect there, just remember every time you come over from the top the same way, don't start alternating, because I think it does actually make a difference in the way that it hangs slightly. So what do you think about those? Will you be using those in your piece? I'm going to finish off again, just as we would do, just to remind you to ideally with this stitch, because we've put an initial stitch in, we should also finish off with another stitch here. So I'm going to take this through, and looking at the length of this piece here, I'm going to make a stitch about that long again to go through. Okay, and I'm going to tie that one off before I do the finishing stitch with the blue. Very Ukrainian colours here I'm using today. And let's finish off with this blue. So as you can see here, we started off with a little stitch. I'm going to do another one of those here just to finish it off properly. There you go. So we have tried open loop and closed loop pendant couching here. Hope you've enjoyed that, and I will be coming back to you soon with some more videos. I've also got some exciting things in the pipeline, but I must just let our American friends know, for those of you particularly who buy from me on my Etsy shop, without getting into politics, which we don't do in our group, and the new tariffs are coming into place on the 29th of August. Now, the UK has arranged a 10% tariff, which would be payable by anyone who buys anything now, regardless of the low cost of them, like my little packets from my Etsy shop. The wording, though, in the information received from the US government is a little bit concerning, because it does say 10% and maybe subject to other charges, sort of as we deem fit. So it is a real worry for us who, I have lovely followers all across the globe, but I do have a lot of American customers as well, and I feel very sorry for you guys, and I also feel quite worried for myself, and I feel quite worried for other sellers who are going to want to sell but are potentially worried about how much people may be charged to buy our little packets of loveliness. So I just wanted to mention it here. Obviously, the 29th of August, we've still got we still got at least a couple of weeks for me to get anything out. So if anyone in the US is concerned about this and doesn't have an alternative route that they could get things through to the US, I won't stop selling to the US, but I will be selling with the caveat that I have no control over whatever costs may be incurred in importing from me above obviously the 10% that we already know that will be charged to anything coming from the UK. So yeah, a little bit concerning, but I have other plans in place, some really exciting things which I'm going to tell you in the next couple of weeks. But please do think if there's any other alternative routes. If you are in the US, if you have family who you see who are in another country that might be able to keep things for you and bring them, or when you go to visit. So I'm going to look at other things and other possibilities. It has shaken us all up a bit, really, and we just have to see what happens. But I've been making some plans in the interim, and they will be about things that won't be won't be affected by this, because there are certain things like if you're not sending something physically through the post. So I will tell you more when I can. But yeah, do have a look if you're in the US and you have your eye on or anything fancy, or you want to get in before. I would say to get in if you can in the next 10 days. It takes usually a week for things to get from me to the US, but I know there are some parts of the US that it seems to take an awful lot longer, and I don't know why that is. So if you want to get in, and I can send packs together, and I will always add extra things if you are buying multiple things in order to make up for the postage. So have a look at my Etsy shop, which is Eleanor Grace UK, all one word, with a capital E and a capital G. Yeah, and I will put a note on here as well about this. So thanks everyone, and yeah, take care, and I hope you've enjoyed this little pendant couching workshop. I really do think these look lovely, so I'm going to look at putting them into something that I'm doing to make use of these. I do have a couple more couching things to show you, so those will come in the next couple of weeks, along with some hopefully exciting big announcements. Thanks very much. Bye.